Alright, now it's time to seat the lock nuts into the front half of the hub. Alright, now a little trick that I've learned is take a round toothpick, slip the lock nut onto the toothpick with the plastic or rubber side facing the thicker end of the toothpick there. And then you can take and put this right down into the hole and take a fingernail, put it on top of the lock nut, pull out the toothpick, and your lock nut will be in the hole. Alright, so easier to install the lock nuts using this method. It does help avoid the problems that a pair of pliers or your fingers could present in putting in this very small piece of hardware. All right, there we go. All three of those are in place. Now, it doesn't really matter for this step if everything's aligned perfectly. I'm going to put my finger over the lock nut I'm going to be working with. So the lock nut doesn't fall out. There we go. And hold on while I get the Allen wrench. Okay, I got one screw in place. Now, to make sure that these guys are lined up, I'll put a second screw in. There we go. I have my finger covering that lock nut. Now that I've got two screws in place, I'm going to go ahead and screw this Allen screw in. I don't need to go all the way in. I just need to make sure that the screw is threading into the lock nut. Okay, now time for the second one. Now my finger on the lock nut will tell me pretty quickly if there's a problem with alignment. You'll feel the lock nut shift. Alright, that one didn't bite. So I'm going to take the blunt end of a pair of pliers here and press down on that lock nut. Make sure it's seated far enough down. Okay, got a bite, but it's not threading. Okay. Let's see, I need a larger blunter tool here. See if we can get this lock nut to seat. Okay, it's not working. Now sometimes that happens, so I'm going to thread this all the way out. And generally, once you get it seated, it'll work okay. You don't want to force it, at least not too hard, because that could damage the threads. Okay, there we go. That has seated. It's not screwing down as far as the first one did. So there's probably some debris in the bottom of this hole. Let me check on that. Just work the lock nut loose with the toothpick here. See if I can get it to come out. Nope, I'm going to break my toothpick. Well, that's not good. Okay. It's not enough clearance for me to just twist that off there. Okay, so I need to do a little bit of work on this. To get it to seat all the way, but let's go ahead and try this other side here. See if we can get, yep, that's seated. And we're pulling this lock nut further down. There we go. Okay, so we got 2 out of the 3 lock nuts seated so that they're below the surface of the hub right here. We want them below the surface. We don't want these nuts sticking up because the dome is going to come down right on top of them. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and figure out what's wrong with this one, pull it out, replace the lock nut if I have to, but I want all 3 of these set up so that I can fit the blades. Alright, so I got that lock nut seated, and I have now fitted the first blade. So you can see the Sharpie hash marks there. So I have the hub aligned properly, and the blade fits pretty well. It's not wiggling up or down. It's not wiggling side to side. It fits very firmly. So now I'm going to take the hub apart, switch the blade over to the second slot, and fine tune it there. Then I'll move to the third slot and do the same for it. That way assuring, assuring that the blade holders are uniform as far as the number 1 blade is concerned. Then I'll take the other 2 blades and modify these sections as necessary so that they fit the same way as this first blade. Alright, so I showed you what I had to do. There is a bit of grinding out necessary to get the tab on the back of the blade here to fit. It didn't take very much. It was just a little careful trimming, and even though I've untightened it, you can see here that there's a good fit. Now see, there's a small gap that's opened up there. If I tighten this back down, that gap disappeared. So there's a small gap right here, but that's probably an inconsistency from when I removed the part from the heat bed on the printer. I use an X-Acto chisel, and sometimes it takes the hot plastic and bends it a little bit. So I could sand that on my flat sandpaper, lap sand it until it gets flatter if I want to. But that's not really something I'm going to be seeing much of. All right. So as you can see there, from this mark in the center, that's the number 1 blade, fitted into the number 1 spot. Now I'll move to the number 2 spot. And test the fit. And just pressing these together, the fit looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and tighten up these screws. All right, now there's a bit of up-down wobble here. So that means I've opened up the space inside a little bit too much. Now there's a simple way of adjusting that. Got to make sure these are all the way down. What I'll do is I'll fit the other blades first. I know this one fits in the number 1 slot. It's the number 1 blade, but the number 2 slot is a little loose. So there's 2 ways I can handle that. One is by taking a designated blade, which will be marked with 2 hash marks as the number 2 blade. And since these ones are halfway finished, they're not totally finished, I might be able to achieve a tighter fit just by taking a little less material off of this blade. The second way of doing it is I like to lay a drop of CA glue on the flat backside right here and then flip it over right here. Take a toothpick and spread those out so I get a line on each side, and then I'll spray hardener on that, and there'll be 2 mounded lines, which will increase the width a little bit here. And then when I stick this blade in the holder, that increased width will take up some room and stop the wiggling. But for now, what I need is a slightly oversized root on a blade to be able to fit that number 2 slot. And that's one of the reasons why we mark and identify the blades. A certain blade will fit in a certain blade holder that matches its marks. That way you can fine-tune the blade to the holder. Okay, I'm going to move this over to the 3rd spot. So that 2nd spot needed no modification in order for the hub halves to come together tightly with no gap. All right, so now we're going to try that 3rd slot. Two hash marks line up. Okay, I could feel this blade shaking around. It's definitely loose in the holder. Alright, so I now go to work to fit the other blades in the holders here. So this number 1 doesn't fit in number 2 and 3 slots without some slop. So we'll have to do a little bit finer job with the other blades. If it doesn't take me too much time here, I'll disassemble this. And drop the other 2 blades in here. Let's find out how that looks. Alright, so number 1, let's put it in the number 1 slot. Let's just take these blades. Okay, I gotta move this where you can see it. Oops. I've got one blade upside down. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is check the gap between the hub front and back. Ah, look at that. See if I can get this to focus. There we go. There's a gap right there. So one of these blades, actually all 3 of them are fitting pretty tight now. Alright, so I have some adjustment to do. These 2 blades at the roots are oversized, which is good. I can shave them down until this gap closes, but not shave them down enough so that it introduces wobble. So I'm going to do that part off camera. So you've already seen how to shave it down. I'll use my flat file here and just take it real easy, one little step at a time, until I get them to fit. Now the slots on the blade roots are fitting into the tabs in the hub. That part is obvious because it closed as far as it did. So I'll mark a number 2 blade. Number 3 blade will remain blank. And look at that. Got most of a propeller. After I fit the blades, it'll be time to clear the slots for the hub to fit on and file down or sand the back of the dome here and make sure that there's no flash or overhang getting in the way of this fitting. Okay, so come back in a little bit with the blades all 3 fitted and do the hub work or the dome work.